Welcome back, friends. Today, I want to talk about something a little bit more personal to me. Those of you that know me know that I have been a painter and I have a love for the arts. I often collect paintings, and one of those subjects I gravitate to is death. The idea of keeping death present and in my awareness, that's called Memento Mori. It's a reminder of death. Now, as we head into the fall, this becomes particularly more apparent in our face with holidays like Halloween and Dia de los Muertos. We see the leaves changing, plants are either dying or hibernating, and we get ready to head into winter. It's in times like these that we not only have a playful preoccupation with death, but it really does feel much more present in our day-to-day lives. Today, I want to go into less of a science discussion, but more the relevance of death to the current fascination with longevity. So let's get into it. For thousands of years, Memento Mori has been a philosophical mirror held up to the living, not to frighten, but to focus. It's the reminder that life in its brevity is more precious precisely because it ends. In ancient Rome, this phrase was whispered to triumphant generals as they would parade through the streets, through cheering crowds. There would be a slave behind them that would murmur, "Remember, you are only a man, and death is not far behind." It was humility in the midst of glory, a tether to reality when the ego might get inflated. Looking forward from there, Memento Mori spread across the centuries, from Stoic philosophers to Christian mystics, and eventually found its most striking form not in words, but in art. During Renaissance, Europe was awakening from the medieval world. Faith met reason, mystery met measurement. Artists began celebrating the human form, light, and proportion. All of the beauty that embodied life. And yet, in the midst of that celebration, Memento Mori was still present. It was a quiet counterpoint, reminding humanity that the flesh it painted so lovingly was still mortal. That tension between light and shadow, glory and decay, gave birth to one of art's most haunting genres, and that's the Vanitas painting. On the canvas, you might see a feast of life laid out before you. Ripe fruit, shimmering glass, a violin or a golden goblet. It'd be rendered astonishingly, but somewhere in the composition, something interrupted the perfection. Maybe it was a skull, a glittering candle, or a wilting flower. Each symbol spoke a moral language. The skull, a direct confrontation with mortality. The hourglass or watch, time's quiet erosion of all things. The wilted flower, beauty, youth, and fame surrendering to chaos. The candle flickering out, the fragility of breath that sustains us. The fruit beginning to rot, that was abundance leading towards decay. Some of my favorite classic painters, Caravaggio, Velázquez, and Titian, brought the theme to life. Their mastery of shadow and reflection turned mortality into a meditation. That skull on the table, it wasn't meant to horrify, it was meant to awaken. Each brushstroke in its own way was an act of worship, a recognition that the fleeting moment deserves reverence because it fleets. It asked us to taste fully, knowing that fruit won't last. So Memento Mori in the Renaissance wasn't about despair, it was pro-life in the deepest sense. It was a manual for presence. The viewer, confronted with this mortality, was invited not to fear, but to prioritize and live more wisely, more vividly, more gratefully. Centuries later, those same symbols walk among us every autumn. The skulls, candles, and flowers migrated from oil paintings into our rituals. Halloween marks the night when the veil between the worlds is thin and when the spirits might wander and ancestors might visit. Fires were lit for protection and remembrance, and over time the ritual has become playful, theatrical, and we wear masks to laugh at the fear, to domesticate it. It's mortality in costume form. Not far away, the Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, preserves something purer and more luminous. Here, the skulls are smiling. They're painted with bright color, wrapped in marigolds, and crowned with laughter and song. Families build altars adorned with photographs, food, candles, and stories. It's not about mourning, but continuity. Mortality becomes a connection, a bridge between generations, a celebration of the eternal pulse that flows through lineage. Both holidays, one mischievous and one devotional, hold the same thread, and that is an annual Memento Mori that doesn't make life smaller, but it makes it richer. We light candles to see the dead, but really, it's the living who are illuminated. At first, Memento Mori and longevity medicine seem like opposites. One reminds us we're going to die, and the other works tirelessly to delay that fate. But they are, in truth, allies, twin expressions of the reverence of time. Modern longevity science, with its biomarkers, senolytics, mitochondrial therapies, and precision prevention, is not a denial of death. It's a deep bow to life. It's a way of saying, this body is temporary and I will tend to it while I can. In Memento Mori, we remember the end to give meaning to the middle. In longevity medicine, we study the mechanisms of decline so we can extend our health span and our capacity for joy and contribution. Both spring from recognition. Time is precious because it runs out. Think of the Renaissance painter's hourglass as today's smartwatch. The symbols change, but the message hasn't. Measure what matters. Don't take time for granted. When we exercise, fast, or sleep deliberately, we are performing a modern ritual of mortality awareness. When we eat with mindfulness or cultivate gratitude, we echo the Vanitas artist's lesson. Beauty and decay coexist. Gratitude is the right response to both. Even the biology aligns. Cellular senescence, oxidative stress, mitochondrial fatigue, these are the body's own Vanitas paintings. Quiet reminders that life is not indefinite. But longevity medicine isn't about fleeing the truth, it's about aligning with it. Supporting the processes that keep us vital without pretending that they are immortal. Psychologists call it mortality salience, the awareness that life ends. Now, unmanaged, it can provoke anxiety or denial, but integrated, it becomes transformative. People who face mortality thoughtfully often make better decisions, value relationships more deeply, and live with greater gratitude. Memento Mori is mortality salience with wisdom attached. Longevity medicine becomes its practical expression, taking that wisdom and turning it into a daily discipline. It's not fear death, it's don't waste life. If you were to paint a Vanitas painting today, it might look different. Maybe a biotracking device, a continuous glucose monitor, a pair of running shoes, and beside that, a sleeping mask. Dare I say, a syringe of peptides, and a smartphone. And yes, still a skull, and beside that, a blooming plant. It's a 21st century still life of reverence and realism. Measure, move, rest, nourish, connect, and never forget the stakes. The skull isn't there to mock your biohacks. It says you are choosing to live with intention because you know that time is finite. And so as the days grow shorter and we light our candles and carve our pumpkins, we find ourselves living the same wisdom the Renaissance painters tried to teach with oil and light. Trees let go of their leaves, not in despair, but in preparation. They make room for renewal. Nature itself is the original longevity medicine, teaching that preservation and release are partners, not enemies. Memento Mori brings humility to our science. Longevity brings stewardship to our mortality. Together, they create a philosophy of life that's both ancient and cutting edge. So this season, between the laughter of Halloween and the quiet glow of Dia de los Muertos, consider that maybe the skull and the smartwatch belong on the same altar. The candles and clinical biomarkers are both ways of saying the same prayer. May I live well while I'm here. Remember that you will die, so you remember to truly live. That is Memento Mori, and that is at the heart of longevity medicine. Thanks for listening in today, and I hope you enjoyed my departure from the usual science video posts. If you enjoyed this, hit like, Feel free to leave some comments. If you want to hear more, subscribe. Enjoy the holiday, and I'll see you next time.